Ay, 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 ay.
Hello guys, this is Blaze back again in a video, and this time we'll be doing another Blaze review. But it's gonna be different this time around because I'll be ranting and complaining for most of this video. I'm not joking, let's talk about the Muv-Luv alternative anime. Now for those of you who don't know, Muv-Luv alternative is my favorite VN, and the series in general is tied with the Symmetrical Index for my number one series I have read, and yeah, I got a lot to complain about it. I know it's the norm for VN adaptations to be trash, but I heard from VN readers that this is worse than the average VN adaptation, and I can definitely see why. Now, this video will be long as fuck. As of writing this script, I might even have to split this into different parts, as I'll be talking about the things that the anime has cut from the VN. So this is basically a review / breakdown / cut content. Also, I will be doing this differently from something like Annie News's cut content if you've seen those, because like I said, I'm gonna be ranting and complaining while also talking about the cut content, and we'll be doing so for the other parts as well. Now to get back into topic, these cuts will definitely answer the criticisms I, VN readers, and anime onis have with this anime, but I'm gonna give another warning because of spoilers before starting, as this will cover Muv-Luv Alternative, the final part of the Muv-Luv trilogy, even though it's safe for anime onis who has watched and finished the anime. This video is not safe for anyone who doesn't know anything about the series, and I recommend for both anime onis and newcomers who wants to understand the things I talk about in this video in full detail to read the original Muv-Luv and Muv-Luv alternative visual novel. It's available on Steam and an experience you will never forget. Okay, with that, let's get on with the video. Episode 1 is actually really good. Genuinely, I am not joking. This episode is fantastic. But it's understandable why, considering this episode is an anime original episode and the only episode in the anime where the original creator of the Muv-Luv VN, Yoshimune Koki, is involved. I'll be talking about him and his thoughts on the anime later on in the video. Now, to give you a refresher on what happens in the world of Muv-Luv Alternative, on April 19, 1973, an extraterrestrial landing unit leaving the moon fell into the earth. After that, mankind is now at war with extraterrestrial life, known as the beings of extraterrestrial origin and adversaries of the human race, or Beta for short. And they reduced the human population with over 1 billion human beings left. Humanity is on the brink of extinction and is desperately trying to defeat the Beta, so they developed the Tactical Surface Fighters, or the TSFs for short, to counteract them, but this alone only increased the lifespan of the human race by a little bit, before its eventual extinction. On July 1998, with the Betas now producing 20 Beta hives throughout Asia, Europe, and Africa, has now invaded Japan. This episode covers the fall of Sadogushima, or Sado Island, and where the Betas made the 21st hive. And my god, it's so good! Definitely the best episode of the earlier parts of the anime. This episode features the character Komaki, a character that's prevalent in Muv-Luv Unlimited the day after, which I have not played yet as of making this video because I'm waiting for the final part of that series, Muv-Luv Resonative, to be released, so I won't be talking about what happens to her after she survived in the Battle of the Fall of Sadogushima. It's even advised by a friend who has read the VN to not talk about that detail, so I guess I won't need to. I guess read the Muv-Luv the day after to find out. Now, one of my favorite aspects of Muv-Luv is that the stakes are very high and the VN makes you fear the Vetas throughout the story, which I rarely feel with antagonists in media. And this episode captures that feeling, even though it's not as much as the VN. It still satisfies it for me. The animation this episode is definitely the best in the anime. Even though the designs with the Betas are quite janky, like the scene with the fourth class, especially that Attack on Titan S scene, which, for those of you who don't know, fun fact, it was heavily inspired by Muv-Luv. Now, to get back on topic, the animation is really good. Mostly, like I said, I love the animation of the TSFs. It's really good. But unfortunately, the 2D animation and character designs are, not that good. but I'll complain about that later. The music is fantastic. One thing from this anime I expected to be great because the music is done by Evan Cole, which is the same guy who did the music for Violet Evergarden. The story aspect is really good as expected considering Koki helped with the episode. Like I said, this episode has the feel of what actually a Muv-Luv alternative anime should be like. And honestly, I talked with some of my friends who are VN readers and they apparently felt nostalgic and got goosebumps watching it. And I can definitely see why because I also felt the same. The characters were good, they fit their roles very well even though they could have developed them much further with one more episode, but who cares, they got killed anyway, except Komaki. And hey, Abi's there. I see him. The VA performance is honestly good this episode, which I'm both surprised and satisfied overall. Overall, this episode is a good 8 out of 10 for me, and keep in mind this is the best episode of the early parts and probably the whole anime series at that. Now, to answer some of the questions about the episode, about the AOT reference, yeah, it's understandable considering, like I said, Muv-Luv heavily inspired Attack on Titan, and second, why do they not take advantage of the skies? Well, to talk about this in great detail, there's multiple talks in the episode talking about the laser class betas, which is actually the deadliest of all the beta species humanity has discovered so far. They can basically shut planes down easily, and you don't know this, but the species is actually intelligent and can evolve like humans do. Unlike the normal Titans in Attack on Titan, they learn and produce counterattacks when humanity makes a stronger strategy that can lower their numbers even more. This is why experimenting on the betas becomes a thing, to find out how humans are trying to figure out a way to communicate with them for negotiations. And I don't want to say this because it's a spoiler, but this is why plans like Alternative 4 was created in the first place. With this question done, now it's time to complain and rant. Let's talk about episode 2, where they actually adapt the VN. Oh boy, let's talk about the abomination that's the anime that skipped over 40 fucking hours of build up and just adapted the payoff. From the opening alone, I can already predict that this is gonna adapt up to episode 6 of the VN, which I'm glad, considering the idea of having to adapt an episode of the VN into one anime episode, which, for those of you who don't know, the VN has 10 parts / episodes with a total runtime of over 45 hours. So yeah, thinking about it is a total nightmare. Now, about the episode, let's start with the first scene after the opening. The anime basically just summarized the ending of the second part of the Muv-Luv trilogy, Unlimited, and as an anime only, having to figure out what happens in the show without knowing what happens in Extra and Unlimited must be a nightmare. I won't be talking about everything in Extra and Unlimited in full detail, but I will, however, be talking about the things that didn't include, so you know, what's the context behind the scenes. So yeah, let's talk about the episode. The opening scene basically says 3 years after the fall of Sarugashima, humanity has fallen, so they will now be using Alternative 5, the plan to send 100,000 people to a planet similar to Earth many light years away, and the rest of humanity will be left on Earth to suffer as every human on the planet will perish at the hands of the beta. Yes, Unlimited is the literal definition of a bad ending. To talk about how they failed to save the Earth and had to use Alternative 5 is that Yuko, the one in charge of Alternative 4, fails to achieve humanity's only hope of saving the world, and now the rest of humanity have no choice but to use Alternative 5. And I won't be talking about any further than that. Now, the scenes with Takaru up to the scene where he encountered the guards is the same like an adaptation should, but of course the VN has more detail that the anime skipped out, like a monologue about Takaru trying to figure out what happens in the previous worlds he lived in which the anime only showed 1 second by basically putting everything in Extra and Unlimited in 1 second. I am not joking, 40 fucking hours of content in 1 second. Shit is a fucking world record. There's a change in the anime where in the anime version, Takaru knows he traveled back in time, while in the VN he's ignorant, still thinking of possibilities of what happened to him. He still doesn't accept whether this is a dream or a reality. He feels more conflicted in the VN, while in the anime he's a very straightforward guy. Which, looking back, it's good for the sake of runtime, but bad from a character standpoint. The scene where he talks to the guards in the anime, he's acting like he's figured it out and is desperate for the sake of being desperate, but in the VN, he's conflicted on what to even do. His memories are still fuzzy and he's actually desperate. The changes are more apparent in the VN. The guard threatening him using the guns they're holding the moment he didn't give an ID. While in the anime, they only threaten him when he attacked one of the guards. Like fucking what? Like what the anime made it feel like it's so easy to enter. Reminder, this is a military base. The VN version is more realistic because of course they're gonna be stern and strict. They're at fucking war with both the betas and amongst themselves. And also Yuko in that scene as well. Takeru needed a lot more convincing in the VN and put his whole heart into it for Yuko to even trust him. We can also feel the emotions he's feeling during that moment. That's why we sympathize with him in the VN. The conversation has a deep atmosphere because this is an on-edge conversation, and Yuko in the VN is more strict and stern. Like, look at this shot in the VN. She's standing holding the gun far away from Shirogane so she can shoot him before he has the chance to even get the gun. While in the anime, she's near him and just sitting while holding the gun. The difference between these two shots are literally day and fucking night. Apart from Yuko being too nice in the anime, Takeru's speech in the anime does not even feel real compared to the VN version. If anything, rereading the VN makes Takeru in the anime feel so generic and cheesy. To be honest, I can say that to the conversation in the anime in general. And with that, we're now done with the first half. Now, the second half is below average, but not as like the first half. It's like that because even though the mood is the same as the VN, the second half is definitely missing out on some character interactions because right now, the characters are literally a fraction of their VN counterparts. Considering they skipped Extra and Unlimited, most of the characterizations that is needed for Alternative to know what their role is, their personality, their development is, etc., has been reduced to fucking atoms. And skipping most of the character interactions made this episode even worse. It makes the characters feel so generic. I hate to even call them that because in the VN they're amazing characters, but to give the anime some tiny credit, they did what they could with the interactions, the amount of time they had. The scene where Takeru and Yuko was talking about how he'll try to be a surface pilot in no time has the same problem with the last interaction. Yuko is too soft in the anime. Even though Yuko trusts Takeru, she's still stern and strict in the VN. This scene was supposed to be the last conversation as well as an off-edge conversation, but the anime ruined the tone, so yeah, I definitely hate it. The last scene with Maya is definitely my favorite part of the episode and probably the only scene where I didn't get angry at all. Actually, I think it's done well, and even though the added scenes that happens in Unlimited episode 9 are not gonna be relevant in the eyes of anime only, to me, it did, because it reminded me of why I love Maya so much during Unlimited and shows there's still a tiny fraction of soul that the original visual novel has. So yeah, that's where the episode ends. My god, what a mostly terrible episode. Like I said, the last scene is the only reason why I do not label this episode as an episode that is completely trash. The anime only reaction for this episode I can find is that this episode is complete trash and another generic mecha harem anime. I hate that they're correct. The franchise will have to deal with that reputation, and honestly, as a very huge fan of the visual novels, it hurts to see. So yeah, let's move on to episode 3. I can already feel the disaster coming. It's time to talk about this disaster of an episode. It adapted 3 hours of gameplay, and you may think it's not bad, but considering the last episode adapted less than half an hour of gameplay and stacked 40 plus hours of extra and limited being skipped, I think you get my point. So yeah. Now the first scene adapted Operation Lucifer, which is the prologue of the Muv-Luv alternative visual novel and a cinematic experience at that. It's decent because they said the important parts, but I'm gonna complain because the scene in the VN is cinematic as fuck and it gave me goosebumps. The anime did it, and one other thing that I didn't like in the anime is that they talk too fast in that scene, which is understandable considering the runtime. Not good to me or the viewer because in the VN it's slow, because it sinks you into the scene and what makes it so immersive. It felt like watching an opening scene of a movie because the presentation and direction of that scene is so fucking good, but unfortunately the anime wasn't able to capture it. The next scene is where they train you on how to use and assemble a gun and doing it in a very short amount of time. Now first of all, Takeru doing that shit where you assemble the gun exceptionally quick doesn't feel disturbed at all. In the anime, which an alternative it was supposed to. To be honest, I can say that with everything he does great in the show. It's because they skip Unlimited. He's basically doing the same thing but better now. For some context, back in Unlimited, the first time he did it, he was shit at doing everything. He does it exceptionally now. And it's because he learns and grows together both as a character and as a soldier with his comrades. Unlimited doesn't just build up the plot, we also see how Takeru is getting used to this world, while in the anime, my guy is literally becoming a Gary Stu, and I swear to god, I never would have thought in my entire life that after reading Alternative, I'd be saying the same thing to Takeru that I would say to Ray fucking Shitwalker and Captain Bitch Ass Motherfucker. I mean Marvel. Okay, calm down. Now at this point, I wanted to stop making this and just drop the anime entirely, but I'm watching this anime and making this video because this is a series I really love and hold dear in my heart as one of my favorite series in fiction. So yeah, let's continue. Now the scene where the girls were praising him and Takeru was thinking of giving the girls some word of encouragement. Now first of all, in the VN version, both scenes happen in the cafeteria. Actually, Takeru's form of encouragement to the girls actually transitions smoothly, while in the anime, both scenes happen in two different places. The classroom for the praise and the encouragement talk in the cafeteria. So it's a really weird transition in the anime. The scene is the same except, as always, the VN has more details and adds more characterization, especially when it comes to the encouragement talk. So yeah. Now on to the next scene. The VN in the anime talks about the same topic both in monologue except in different places. In the VN, he goes back to his room, while in the anime, he's just walking around thinking about Mikoto, and then he thought of Kasumi. In the anime, he only thought of that one scene at the very end of Unlimited and visits her. In the VN, Takeru was thinking a lot about her. He wants to learn more about Kasumi, the answer why she's involved with Alternative Force plan than any of them. He also talks about the insignias on the shoulder part of the uniform because all of them just say Yokohama base, but Kasumi had Alternative 4 on hers. The reason behind what she talked about in her final important scene in Limited and why she's so fixated with that tube and she's almost always there and never leaves it. And lastly, why did she acted and sounded like Sumika in that scene in the end before entering the room where she's always in. Takeru just brushed it off as a coincidence, not knowing what it actually means until he puts all the pieces together. Now, the next scene feels two different scenes in both mediums. In the anime, he meets Kasumi and tries to give her a handshake and proceeds to exchange names, and then Takeru proceeds to leave. They play the OST that plays when you're on the original Muv-Luv visual novel title screen. The name of it, if I remember correctly, is Neighborhood Park. Don't quote me on that, and in my opinion, it's great for the tone of that scene since it's a comfy OST with the scene. It's just two different people, quote unquote, meeting each other for the first time, and then there's the VN version. The scene is so different from the VN because Takeru talks about the progress with Kasumi he has made so far. Since it took a while for him to do it in Unlimited, he acts cautious because he's still suspicious of her because of that scene, especially when he saw the Alternative 4 insignia on her shoulder again, and also add the things in the anime that didn't cut, and boom, we got the VN version. The OST used for the scene in both the anime and visual novel are completely different and both fit the tone of their scene version. The VN OST they played, which is called Kasumi, which plays every time Takeru enters that room. The only way to describe it is it's creepily beautiful, which fits the VN version of that scene, especially since the anime didn't make the room as eerie as the VN. The anime is just a bunch of computers in a compact room with a tube in the middle. In the VN version, it's a very big room with a lot of big wires attached to this big ass tube. The anime made it smaller, unfortunately. He talks about his thoughts about Kasumi, and then she says bye-bye, which hurts his chest knowing what happened at the very end of Unlimited. So yeah. Let's move on to the next scene. Now, this scene is really important, even though it's 5 minutes in the anime and 10 minutes in the VN. In the anime, they brushed off Kasumi and Takeru proceeds to talk to Yuko. In the VN, it actually has a meaning, something that foreshadows of what Kasumi is, because when Takeru asks Yuko about Kasumi's involvement in Alternative 4, he actually thought of it while Kasumi was talking to Yuko, and then when that thought crossed his mind, Kasumi sensed it and proceeds to leave. That's actually a foreshadowing. Now, anime onlys, you can go wild with your theories with that info because I won't be revealing it until they reveal in the anime, unless when I upload this video, they already revealed it. But yeah, who knows. Let's talk about Takeru and Yuko. In that scene, the conversation were the same, but unfortunately, they got some conversation that makes Yuko, well, the Yuko I know, like how she talked about changing the future. It's even more detailed. Yuko asks more questions and Takeru answers them, and at the end of their talk, Yuko was supposed to give Takeru an encouragement talk, which was unfortunately skipped in the anime. The anime version is not the Yuko I know. Her personality is literally a fraction of what it was. She talks a lot, giving very well explanations. She complains about the task that Takeru has given her. These small details are really important, especially for her characterization. Now the next scene I actually laughed looking back because they didn't even show the test in the anime. Now before Takeru bumped into Mikoto, they straight up skipped 15 minutes of character interactions where they practice aiming with a gun. It really adds more to the characters of the squad and shows how he is different from them. He's exceptional for a newly listed soldier. Takeru honestly goes too far, to the point the girls ask why everything they do he does exceptionally, but he's newly listed. The girls were even giving him an expression of doubt of the authenticity of his resume, but Takeru skips the question by running away and then he bumps into Mikoto. In the anime, he's just walking around things of what he has done so far and then bumps into Mikoto. Like fucking what? They literally had the opportunity to make Meiya, Chizuru, Kei, and Miki feel like characters and they miss so much. And I'll definitely be bringing this up again when I'm talking about the tests that they skipped. Now, in the anime, Takeru asks Mikoto what day is it and proceeds to visit Yuko after a week. That wasn't supposed to happen for like another hour of gameplay. They literally skip 1 hour of characterization, their training, and some important interactions, but it won't be talking about it in detail. I'll only be giving the summary. So yeah, at this point, just read the VN to find out what they do. Meiya sparring with Takeru, which in Unlimited he gets his ass beaten, but in Alternative it's the opposite. CPR training, which I would love to see animated. It's hilarious, by the way. So just for you who don't know, Takeru joking around with Kasumi and the squad talking about different topics, including some important ones, etc., etc. Now let's get to the scene where Takeru talks to Yuko about the beta surfacing Niigata in a few days. Now this scene, all the way to the scene where Yuko talks to Takeru to leave her room, has no changes. It's just that the VN has more details into the operation and interactions between the characters. So yeah, there was a scene cut after he left Yuko where he talked to Kasumi for a bit, and the next scene is the next as the anime. Now let's get to the CCSE. Oh boy, my fucking god, at this point in the VN, the test was shorter than Unlimited. Back then, Takeru was shit, dragging his teammates down and barely passed the test, so in Alternative, he gets better and accomplish it faster than before. Unfortunately, anime onlys will never see both Unlimited and Alternative version of the CCSE in the anime, only because the test in the anime is literally 1 minute and 30 fucking seconds. In the Alternative visual novel, it's 44 minutes, and in Unlimited, it's even longer. We lost a lot, and I mean a lot, of characterization and development from this one ass test. Fuck this episode. Literally the definition of a 1 out of 10 episode. The quote-unquote first meeting of Takeru and Kasumi, a cameo appearance of my GOAT, Captain Izumi, and the Yuko shot at the beach was the only thing that prevented this episode to become a 1 out of 10. I'm so fucking angry right now. Calm down. Calm the fuck down. Now, to talk about what they cut, I literally have to summarize the entire event, and I'm doing the Alternative version because, like I said, the Unlimited version is longer because he makes a lot of mistakes. Now, this test is basically a survival test where you have to be in a specific spot in the island after 6 days because a helicopter will be there to pick you up. The test here is that if you can survive the traps, the obstacles, and if you get food and water and survive there for 6 days while going to that specific spot. Now, the squad split into 3 teams. Takeru's teammate being Mikoto because she's a professional in the wild, same as in the Unlimited. A regroup after 3 days after their own reconnaissance and analysis of the parts of the island. This test faced hard challenges like avoiding net traps, getting bitten by a snake, escaping a facility that got blown up after, taking risks, getting attacked by machines with guns, picking on what's the right bridge to cross, etc, etc. And then they finished the test. Of course, Marimo saying congratulations, which she's really proud of them, and the scene where Chizuru is crying in the anime is absolutely unnecessary because you don't know why she was crying in the first place. The VN answers that. It's because actually it's their second time taking the test. The first is before Takeru was even enlisted. Now that they accomplished the test, Chizuru was so overwhelmed with joy and that's where the episode ends. Holy fuck, what the fuck is this shit? So much characterization, development, important dialogues and interactions, foreshadowing, loss. This episode is a fucking disaster, no fucking doubt. Let's calm down for a moment because I really want to talk about this. In the Muv-Luv livestream during October 22 and 23, October 22nd being the day where the time loop starts, which is an important day in the trilogy, it's definitely why they picked the fall season to coincide with that date. Yoshimune Koki, the creator of Muv-Luv, saw the backlash from episode 3 and can understand why the fans are angry. He even expressed his anger towards the anime adaptation with how much things they cut in this episode. Like I said, he literally isn't involved past episode 1, so he's also making predictions on what's gonna happen next, and that's the original creator. He even says to not harass any of the seiyus and anyone involved in the production because they don't control the grand scheme of things because it's the management company. In this case, Abex Pictures is responsible why it turned this way. Anyways, this is just a couple of examples that he said on the iCard above or in the links in the description. In another Muv-Luv live stream that happened, you can see in his face he was excited when he talked about the upcoming releases of Muv-Luv. But when it came to the anime stuff, especially the NFTs, my god, he was definitely in pain at that moment, and the fans can understand why. They butchered his creation. I really respect Koki as a creator. He made this phenomenal series and I couldn't be more thankful to him. I really want to end this segment on a happier note despite that disaster in episode. So yeah, let's get into episode 4. Episode 4 is not bad. It's actually decent in fact. Now let's start with the opening scene. It's the same scene as the VN, so not complaining. There's a cutscene of Kasumi waking up Takeru, but on the way she bumped her head, and that interaction is cute. There's also where Takeru gave Kasumi the seashell instead of that room, but there's a scene later on of Kasumi with the seashell, so I can understand why the anime Takeru gave her the seashell there, so yeah. Okay, the scene where Marimo was teaching them the basic control of the TSFs, well, the anime only showed a very simple version of it. The VN expands on it, like how the complex mechanics would work and the parts of the TSFs as well. They also cut some interactions with the squad as well, like not surprised anymore considering 99% of their characterization, development, and dialogues are not present in the anime. They're literally just shells at this point. There's also should have been a flashback of Takeru and Sumika as kids talking. After that, the scene where Takeru finished the action training application process D and the girls were surprised, Takeru letting the girls see his results so they could keep up with him, or Marimo said that Yuko was the one who gave them the Fufukis, were the same except the anime cut the scene where the girls were getting suspicious of the authenticity of his resume. So at that scene, he also lied of being in an elite team. So yeah. There's also a cut scene where Takeru was talking to Yuko about the announcement. Yuko basically says that it's gonna be a handicap since, of course, he wants to be a soldier ASAP after all. Now, the scene with Kasumi is the same, like I said. The anime Takeru gave him the seashell in that scene. Also, that seashell is a nice detail considering what Kasumi wants. There's also a flashback that was supposed to happen much later. It's pretty much Takeru and Sumika interaction, so yeah. Now, this scene, the VN, was supposed to be shown later on. The episode basically just put it in this scene. It's the scene where Kasumi gave a gift to Takeru, which was a sketchbook, and when Takeru opened the sketchbook, Kasumi drawn something that doesn't even exist in this world. A Game Boy. I mean Game Guy. In that scene, Kasumi was still in there. In the VN, she didn't actually leave till Takeru looked at her. In the anime, she disappeared instantly. It's not just that. Instead of Takeru saying who was she and cuts to the other scene, in the VN he was monologuing about how it's a coincidence. Yuko must have sneaked into his room and found it, contemplating on who and what Kasumi is. Is she Sumika or is she another person? At this point, Takeru has so many questions he wants to know about Kasumi. Okay, every scene after this is also shuffled, so I might get confused. You know what? Let's see how different it is now. What you're seeing now on screen are the events in order in both anime and visual novel. From this point onwards, I'll be talking about the events in the visual novel order, so I won't confuse myself, so yeah. Now, people reacting to the Fubukis are still the same, but the cat interactions of Squad 07B and Marimo talking about how Yuko worked hard on doing this task. Now comes the part where I can't excuse shit. Maya in this part is very vital. The anime just brushed her off again, and it's because of the Takeme Katsuchi and her situation she's in. In this part, Mana and the three idiots were just standing. They only reacted when Maya was about to talk to her, and also the anime skipped an important monologue where he called the three behind Mana the three idiots in his thoughts because back in Extra, the world that Takaru originated from, they were three idiots that followed Mana around, and honestly, their heights should have been short. The anime didn't do that, sad. Anyways, both Mana and Maya were very passive in the anime, while in the VN, Mana was aggressive when talking to her to try to accept the Takeme Katsuchi that was prepared for her. Like they said in both anime and VN, this is a state-of-the-art mech that only the royal guards of the shogun can use. So this is a big deal and adds more on who Maya is in this world, how important she is just to be given Takeme Katsuchi. Now back to the topic. After a long back and forth, Maya declines like she did the entire time and proceeds to leave. The girls went after her, and just when Takaru was about to follow her, Mana talks to Takaru about him being dead. Now in the anime it's short, but in the VN, Mana and the three idiots were so aggressive that she even threatens to kill him if he ever gets close to Maya. Now the anime cuts this important, but whatever at this point. But Maya can hear the conversation and decide to intervene. After talking over and over with her, Maya told Mana to back off and leaves. This shows off how much an important individual Maya is. Ordering a first lieutenant can only be done by high-ranking people. Now after this, Takaru and Maya talked long about what Mana said to him. She concluded that he just came from another country. They also talk about how cumbered the squad is when Takaru appeared, how touchy all the members passed, and how over time their bond and camaraderie were stronger. I can't believe the anime skipped this. Like, if you're making the anime while not making the characters feel human, bruh, this is honestly the biggest mistake of the anime. Now, the scene where Takaru thought about the game that he was playing, Valgern on, whatever the fuck you can pronounce it, a game where he and his friends were playing back in the world of Extra, which, by the way, is a blatant way to say that this is gonna be a mecha series later on. It's honestly good. Anyways, after the training session and reminiscing about those times, he went to Yuko and asked if she can implement it to the TSFs. I'm talking about the mechanics of Valgern on that Takaru used to play, to make it more easy to use and let the mecha have more movement. So your time fighting against the beta will be a bit easier. So yeah, the anime kept the important parts, which I'm glad. What I didn't like is after that, Takaru proceeds to talk about he's dead in this world, and Yuko proceeds to make multiple theories of what actually happened to both him and the Takaru of this world. Another detail I want to talk about is how Yuko now feels almost the same as her VN counterpart, because in this scene where they talked about the TSFs, Yuko was honestly soft and kind to Shirogane, so yeah. Now what they cut is another scene of Kasumi waking up Takaru, which is also after the sketchbook fiasco, so both are awkward with each other right now. What is the same is that Marimo's announcement that the UN Undersecretary will be expecting the base, which in the anime Takaru was only surprised but instead was full of thoughts of the HSST incident, proceeds to be anxious and scared while monologuing and proceeds to talk to Yuko about it. Now, where they talked about it, why do I gotta repeat this every goddamn time? It's the same as the VN, but the VN has more info and detail, especially when it came to the hives. Takaru was really anxious and scared during that conversation, but when they talked about the hives, he was shocked, having more fear and anxiety. Now, this is where the episode ends. Now, the conversation didn't just end there. After the topic, they switch over to the topic of Alternative 4 and Alternative 5, and how they can accomplish Alternative 4. Now, for the sake of spoilers, I'll probably include it in part 2 where the anime touches upon it even more, which I'll probably never make. So yeah. Now, the last thing about the episode that was covered was the cafeteria fiasco and those surface files. Now, this was supposed to happen after the conversation with Yuko, but the anime decided to put it after Mana was introduced. Now, to talk about it more in the anime, they were eating and those files came up to them, but in the VN they were talking about Thomas' plan to make her the leader of Squad 07B. Fun fact, the leader of the squad is Chisu. I didn't talk about it till now, but yeah. It's because the UN Undersecretary is actually Tama's father, and of course with this plan, she wants to make her father proud, so yeah. After that, the confrontation happens. Like with Mana, the files were more aggressive in the VN. Now for comparison, Takeru flinched when he took the punch in Unlimited. I don't know if it's right, but that's what I remember. In alternative, he knows what's gonna happen. He didn't try to counteract because he knows Mana will intervene, so he took that punch with no hesitation and makes that speech. That's where Mana appeared and break that fight. Now in the anime, Mana just proceeded to leave, but in the VN, Mana left the room with some good impression of Takeru, so her impression of him improved a little bit. And even more when Takeru said thank you and talks about leaving Maya to him. Now before that, his friends had to get him back up, which most of the event the anime skipped. Now the last part was Takeru talking to Marimo and decides to excuse his actions of talking back against his superior. It's because the girls and Mana talked to her about excusing him in the VN. We saw how they did in the anime, which they only showed a bunch of images, and after that he thanked the girls after, which is also cut, and that's where the content of this episode ends. Fucking hell, man. Fuck what I said in the beginning. Shit was terrible. It made my score even lower after analyzing and comparing the episode to the VN. Like, this episode, there's a lot of important parts cut, and that's what makes this episode terrible. It would definitely continue that cycle to the end. Now, to give some very tiny credit, this is the best episode after the last three. My other problems were the shuffling of scenes and horrible cuts. Like, fuck man, I'm betting this video has better cuts than this episode. So yeah, this is where the episode segment ends. Now, for this final segment, we'll be talking about how much the anime adapted and how much time they are in the Muv-Luv alternative visual novel, because they already cut all of Extra Unlimited and summarized them horribly in episode 2. So yeah, episode 1, Save the World. It's an anime original episode, so no cuts. Episode 2, Recurring Worlds. It only adapted a recurring nightmare of episode 1. That's about 53 minutes if you put it on auto read. Episode 3, Something to Protect. It adapted the prologue of the visual novel Operation Lucifer, the rest of episode 1 and all of episode 2 and 3, except the ending scene where they finished the CCSE. That's about 2 hours and 32 minutes if you put it on auto read. Episode 4, Comrades. It adapted the ending scene of episode 3 and episode 4 up to prevent the HSST incident. That's about 1 hour and 47 minutes if you put it on auto read. Overall, episodes 1 to 4 are a mixed bag. One good one, one bad one, two absolutely horrible ones. So yeah. Now, at the end of the day, this video is a passion project of mine. It basically runs on my motivation, so not gonna lie, I might not even keep my promise of doing a part 2 or part 3, so I'm just gonna apologize if I didn't off the bat. I'm sorry if I didn't. So yeah. This is right in the video, guys. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you miss any of my videos. Share to the friend and watch these videos. Thanks right there. So yeah, look forward to the next video. So yeah.
Bye bye.